This is the moment that Jordan Mcsweeney was arrested for the brutal murder and rape of Zara Aleena.
Jordan Mcsweeney. Jordan. Jordan Mcsweeney.
Cuffs on, yeah.
Can you stand up for us, mate?
Just tell him.
You're under arrest for rape and murder of a female at Cranbrook Road, okay, on the 26th of June 2022 in the early hours of the morning. You do not have to say anything, but it may harm your defence if you do not mention when questioned something you later rely on in court. Anything you do say may be given in evidence. Do you understand? Right, stand up for us then, mate. Stand up.
All right.
Okay.
I've got it. Yep. Come forward.
Just going to search you now, alright? Yeah.
This happened on the 26th of June last year. I originally covered this story. And this week he has been jailed for a minimum of 38 years. The judge at the sentencing today described him as having no spine, and he refused to come up from the cells to face the sentencing.
His crimes shows that the man who took Zara Aleena's life has no spine whatsoever.
He murdered Aleena in the early hours of the morning when she was walking home from a night out with friends. But before Zara crossed paths with Jordan, he would pursue several other women throughout the night, sexually harassing them. The court heard CCTV was shown that Mcsweeney was thrown out of a bar and he began to walk along the Romford Road towards Manor Park. The CCTV shows how drunk he was and nearly walks into a bus when he's crossing the road. He then catches sight of his victim as she's crossing at the traffic lights, and he persists to follow her all the way down the Romford Road, harassing her. They come to the junction in Newham and she goes inside a shop, and at this point he also follows her inside the shop, but he doesn't buy anything. He then leaves the shop and waits around the corner until she emerges. She then makes her way down the road and he follows her, but luckily the address that she was going to was nearby. He then turned around and walked off. This woman could have easily been another victim, or potentially the victim that Zara became. The police discovered that Zara had left the Champs Bar and Grill at 1:58 and she made her walk down Cranbrook Road. She would then cross paths with Jordan, who would persist to follow her for a period of time before he decided to strike. Jordan was also seen following another woman down Cranbrook Road moments before he had bumped into Zara. The court heard that she was approached from behind on Cranbrook Road by her house, and Mcsweeney subjected her to a brutal attack. She suffered 47 injuries. Neighbours and passers-by found her and provided Zara with first aid until paramedics arrived. One person also gave her CPR and she was rushed to hospital but died later in the morning. She was 35 years old. The investigation found that Mcsweeney had spent the evening of the 25th inside a bar in Ilford. He was drinking heavily until he was kicked out at 11 p.m. Over the course of the next 3 hours, he was seen on CCTV roaming around the Ilford and Manor Park area, visibly drunk and approaching lone women for prolonged periods. Shortly after 2 o'clock in the morning, Sweeney spotted Zara on Cranbrook Road and he followed her for about 10 minutes, they said. He attacked her in the driveway of the house on Cranbrook Rise and then he tried to make his escape. Following Zara's death, they circulated an image of the man that they wanted to speak to, and an officer who had arrested Jordan previously had identified him, and they compared fingerprint records with blood that was found at the scene, and it confirmed to be a match. Simultaneously, the detectives were examining footage from CCTV cameras and they seen Mcsweeney calmly leaving the murder scene, walking along Cranbrook Road and climbed over a fence into nearby Valentine's Park. He was staying in a caravan in the fairground. He was seen carrying a bag in the fairground and taking it to the ticket office, and then he left without the t-shirt that he wore on the night of the murder. The police would later find this evidence inside there. Several CCTV cameras caught him on his journey. One was a residential camera that caught him as he crossed over the main road. The second was a council camera that caught him as he went by the field area. And the last camera that caught him as he was entering Valentine's Park, and these were the cameras that were connected to the boathouse. They then seen him entering the fairground where he went to his accommodation. On the afternoon of Monday the 27th of June, 36 hours after the attack, officers were sent to the fairground to make inquiries. They confirmed that Jordan was staying on the site, and at 2:40 they arrested him on suspicion of murder and rape. While he was in custody, CCTV inquiries were carried out at the fairground. On the early hours of the 29th of June, Mcsweeney was charged with murder, rape and also robbery. The latter offence related to the removal of Zara's belongings. Many of them were found discarded on the route from the crime scene. When he eventually pled guilty on the 18th of November, the indictment was amended to 2 counts of murder and sexual assault, rather than the original offences of rape and robbery. Mcsweeney's plea was accepted, and he said that the murder was sexually motivated. Detective Inspector Dave Wellham said, "To lose a loved one in terrible circumstances is awful, particularly in this case where the public attention was so great. Zara's family showed remarkable courage and strength throughout the ordeal, and my thoughts and those of my team are with the family at this time." Jordan Mcsweeney was not a sophisticated criminal. He attacked Zara in an open residential street and made a clumsy effort to hide evidence. This was a ferocious and repetitive attack, and it shocked even experienced murder detectives. The length of the sentence handed down by the court is an indication of the severity. Zara's murder affected everybody in the local area and also nationwide, and a lot of the attention was focused on the murder for a long period of time. Zara's family said in a statement after the sentencing, "There are questions still to be answered, there are lessons still to be learnt and changes that need to be made. Zara's life was senselessly and brutally crushed, and today, like every other day, we have to live with the horror that we are faced. Zara was the light, the warmth, the birdsong, the laughter in our family, and we live with the profound loss every single day. We are deeply touched by the kindness that everybody has shown, and this is a testament of the power of Zara's spirit." The senior prosecutor said this was a savage attack on a woman who was only making her way home. She should have been able to get home safely and not subjected to horrific and shocking violence at the hands of Mcsweeney. She then went on to thank the police for everything they did in relation to the case and said that no sentence can ever make up for it, but at least his freedom has been taken away after he took Zara's life. Following a series of violent attacks on women that involved sexual violence and also murders, police presence was increased in town centres and high streets in order to try to reduce crime and also raise confidence with women. It was revealed also in court that Mcsweeney had an extensive history and a lot of convictions. None of them were for sexual assaults, but there was definitely a chain of events that led to this. And he was also due to be recalled to prison on the 24th of June, the day before he murdered Zara. And a review is ongoing as to anything they can do to try to improve the process between the probation and also the police. So I really appreciate you joining me for this story and following this story over the past year. And a thank you for everybody that has commented as well. Please don't forget to follow on social media at Scarcity Studios. I'll be back again very shortly with some more news.
From racially motivated offences, driving offences and an assault on police, to battery and assault occasioning actual bodily harm. He began his criminal career as a teenager, which may be a sign of the dysfunctional family experience he had endured. Nothing he was deprived of in terms of familial love, boundaries, safety or security could begin to justify his actions and attitudes as an independent adult with the ability to reason and opportunities to reform available to him. On the 17th of June 2022, he was released from custody after serving a portion of a custodial sentence. On the 21st of June, he went to live with a friend in his caravan in a fun fair in Valentine Park, Ilford. As part of his release on licence, he was supposed to attend appointments with the probation service, but he failed to do that. Breach of this condition would, as he would have been told, lead to his arrest and return to detention. His licence was revoked on the 24th of June. On the night of the 26th of June, just 9 days after release from prison, Jordan Mcsweeney was prowling the streets of Ilford looking for a woman to attack. His victim that night was Zara Aleena, a smart and successful 35-year-old, a complete stranger, someone whose values and character were entirely the opposite of his. She had studied law and was due to be admitted onto the solicitor's roll. Miss Aleena's aunt, Farah Naz, and her grandmother, Rashda Parveen, have told the court in articulate, elegant and moving terms how precious and special the woman this defendant sexually assaulted and murdered was. Every human being has her own essential qualities. Zara believed in justice. She had a strong moral compass. She filled her life with big ideas, big plans, and a zest for existence. She was confident and active, working and volunteering to use her talents to the full. She was well loved, her mother's only child, and her death has broken that woman. Zara's absence is being felt constantly by the entire family, the extended family. The light has gone out from their lives, they have told the court. They will campaign for a better world in her name. For the life she lost, having done nothing wrong, they want to make the world safer for others. The defendant had been drinking that night with the friend whose caravan he was sharing. He was pestering women. He groped a woman at the Great Spoon of Ilford and tried to molest a female member of staff. Eventually, he was ejected just after 11 p.m. He walked off in the direction of Cranbrook Road and for the next 2 hours prowled around desperate to find a victim. He was captured just after midnight, obviously intoxicated, and following a woman, a stranger, down Romford Road. He deployed some degree of subterfuge, waiting to get her in front and falling behind when she appeared to notice him. The woman may well have realized he was following her because, wisely, she entered a shop and showed her wariness by looking backwards towards the doorway. Indeed, he hung around outside that shop, waiting for her to leave. He entered and left without making any purchase. She watched him leave and waited yet more time before leaving herself. He was still in the vicinity but hidden, and she waited for a while in the curtilage of the shop. When she moved away, the defendant emerged and followed her down Gloucester Road. She began to run, and she outran him. It is no hyperbole to say that her actions that night saved her life. This pursuit had lasted 21 minutes. That woman has not been identified. Before long, the defendant saw another potential victim who was inside a chicken shop on Romford Road. He entered and stared at her and put his hand spoke to the defendant. He put his arm around her and his hand between her legs before desisting. The two of them walked down a side street and paused together, but she then walked away. It is not known whether this was another encounter with a stranger or the defendant knew her. He has not said. For the next 50 minutes, he remained wandering around in Cranbrook Road, despite being minutes from where he was living. Shortly before 2 a.m., he came across a fourth woman who came out of a side road into Cranbrook Road. The defendant's attention turned to her immediately, and he followed her into Northbrook Road and beyond over the course of minutes. This was, in my judgment, another deliberate pursuit, and her actions on the CCTV, looking back over her shoulder and speeding up her walk, indicate that she also became aware of it. He overtook her and turned into one of the houses in the street, obviously waiting to surprise and grab her. He was disappointed because she happened to be making her way to a house on the opposite side of the street and was able to enter it safely. Coincidentally, Zara Aleena and her friend Bamini Bhatti had been in the Great Spoon of Ilford too earlier in the evening. But by 2 a.m. they were leaving a bar called Champ's Sports Bar in Chapel Road nearby. Miss Aleena decided to walk home. She did not have far to go. Her friend, Miss Bhatti, had called a taxi. As many women do these days, she called her friend to check that Zara had got home safely, but she never got any response. The defendant and Miss Aleena reached the junction of Northbrook and Cranbrook Roads at the same time. It was a fatal coincidence. He waited for her to go past and then crossed the road so that he was behind her. He followed her for some distance, getting to within a few meters of her until she reached number 268, a residential property on Cranbrook Road with a wide paved front garden or driveway. At that point, there were no other people on the street. The attack was captured on domestic security cameras. He grabbed her and pulled her backwards, one arm around her neck, the other over her mouth. She was dragged deeper into the darkness of the driveway, and it's clear that she struggled and fought him. But he had the advantage of surprise and strength, and he was successful in subduing her. He then parted her legs while she was on the ground, but still she fought and resisted, getting up again. Again, he attacked her and pulled her back onto the ground. She must have been rendered unconscious because he then dragged her around without independent movement from her. He removed some of her clothing and sexually assaulted her. The security camera on the front of the house does not provide a clear image of these events. He kicked and stamped on her, his movements indicating that these were repeated, heavy assaults. He was not carried away. He had not been overtaken by an uncontrollable urge. It's clear that he was wholly aware of what he was doing. This is indisputably correct, because when he realized that someone was coming past the house on the pavement, he bent out of sight before resuming what he was doing. After satisfying his lust, he proceeded to destroy the woman he had just degraded. With sickening deliberation, he stamped on her. Then he left the driveway, but after walking a few meters, he returned and repeatedly stamped down on her body again, using the balustrade for balance. He searched her body again and left for a second time, carrying things of hers. Still not finished, having walked away this time further, he again returned to Miss Aleena and bent down by her body before stamping on her again. This abduction, sexual assault and murder lasted just 9 minutes. He had carried away her phone, keys, purse, leggings and underwear, and they were found abandoned nearby. He was captured on CCTV at the fair, where the caravan was located, with bloodstains on his clothing and trainers as he returned. Zara Aleena's body was found by 2 couples walking past, and emergency services were called. Some of those members of the public have been traumatized by what they saw. The court commends their swift and compassionate actions in seeking help. Miss Aleena was desperately injured, struggling for breath, and her life was in danger. All that could be done was done by the medical professionals who answered the 999 call. They tried to save her life on the driveway for over an hour. She arrived at the Royal London Hospital after 4 a.m. and the work continued, but by 9:58 a.m. she was dead. She had suffered 46 separate injuries. These included severe blunt force trauma to her head, deep lacerations to her scalp, bruising to her lips, ear, eyes, nose, and jaw. She had suffered genital injuries. The severity of the violence caused traumatic brain injury. She died because of the brain injuries and prolonged neck compression. She had been stamped and strangled to death. The defendant had left 2 fingerprints in blood on the balustrade. Through intelligent and swift work by the Metropolitan Police, he was quickly identified and arrested on the 27th of June at his caravan in Valentine Park. He made no coherent response to arrest. His blood-stained trainers and jeans were found secreted in the caravan park. He had hidden them there in the afternoon of the 26th of June. His demeanour on the relevant CCTV footage from the site that afternoon suggests no cares, no regrets, no contrition. At the police station, he said he was on medication for ADHD and suffered from a split personality disorder. He also claimed to have been bitten by a dog. He refused treatment and threatened officers at the station. He made no comment in 3 police interviews and exhibited utter disrespect for the situation he was in, given what he knew he had done so recently. Nothing a judge says can make any difference to what happened to Miss Zara Aleena. No sentence of the court can bring her back. The defendant had the physical advantages of strength and surprise. In everything else, she was better than him. She was talented, spirited, intelligent, and kind. Spending the evening with her friend, she had done nothing wrong, taken no misstep, shown no lack of sense. She was simply a happy, healthy woman living her life in what most Londoners think of as the best city in the world. The defendant has been brought to the street, reveals a resolve to find and attack a vulnerable female. He confronted or followed several women. I am sure that the defendant intended to sexually assault a woman violently, using such force as required to achieve submission and to frighten her. Although I do not sentence on the basis that this was a premeditated murder, I am also satisfied that he was quite prepared to kill if necessary. As it turned out, he decided it was. Secondly, although he has no previous convictions for sexual offences or crimes of serious violence, the prosecution relies on records of his previous aggressive behaviour as an aggravating feature. The evidence is of 4 specific incidents since 2009 and a large number of incidents of aggression in prison. I ignore the earliest incident provided by the prosecution. But in 2010, his partner alleged domestic violence. She told the police that he had assaulted her, pushed her down the steps, pulled her hair and strangled her. She bore visible injuries. He was arrested and he gave an account to the police largely in line with what she had said, but he excused himself because she had been, quote, going on, and as a result he lost his temper. Between May 2018 and June 2019, he abused another woman with whom he was in a relationship soon after it began. He would slap her, punch her, beat her, kick her in the ribs, and drag her along the road. In February 2020, while in prison, he threatened to kill a prison officer who had spoken to him after he'd damaged his cell. He said he would cut off his head and open him up. This sort of threatening attitude and behaviour is his default presentation. Intelligence reports disclosed to the defence demonstrate that on the 20th of December 2015, whilst located in the segregation unit of a prison, he made threats to carry out very serious harm to a prison officer who was female. They also include a report that in March 2017 he became abusive and aggressive when asked to remove photographs from his cell wall by another female officer, to whom the defendant also made threats of really serious bodily harm, including stabbing. He said, "I've stabbed govs before, check my file and watch what I do to you." His record of adjudications in custody shows that he had 223 adjudications between August 2010 and June 2022, 165 of which resulted in charges, 139 resulted in verdicts, and 169 resulted in sanctions. Among them are numerous adjudications for committing assault and for using threatening, abusive or insulting words or behaviour. The Police Intelligence Unit incidents for a prisoner report records 102 incidents for Jordan Mcsweeney between August 2012 and April 2022. Amongst these incidents are serious assaults on other inmates, improvised weapons being found in Jordan Mcsweeney's possession, and general disobedience. I remind myself that it is only that which I can be sure of to the criminal standard of proof that can be relevant to the decision I must make on a minimum term. I am sure to that standard that the defendant is a pugnacious and deeply violent man with a propensity to violence. In my judgment, this material is also relevant to the extent that it demonstrates that his behaviour on the night of the 26th of June 2022 was not an aberration. It was a steep and sudden escalation of violence which had simmered in his life for many years. Thirdly, I have to determine whether this is a case in which I am sure that the degree to which Miss Aleena suffered mentally or physically before her death is an aggravating feature. It is argued that she is likely to have been unconscious very early on and during much of the attack. That she remained unconscious is speculation, and there is evidence contrary to that suggestion, including the need, as he saw it, for the defendant to return to the victim twice after initially leaving her. She survived 8 hours after the attack. I am sure she will have suffered inordinately, and this is an aggravating feature. Fourthly, I have no doubt Jordan Mcsweeney intended to kill Zara Aleena. The nature of his attack, stamping on her head, and the fact that he returned twice drives me to the conclusion that this was a determined intention to kill. Finally, is there any degree to which culpability for this murder is lowered because of a mental disorder or disability? Mr. Carter Stevenson submits that I should have regard to the defendant's statement at the police station that he has attention deficit hyperactivity disorder and personality disorder. As I observed to counsel, the court has no psychiatric report from any expert who examined the defendant. I have considered the report of the psychologist, Dr. Black, very carefully. I bear in mind all the mental ill health identified therein, which counsel has summarised as making the defendant someone who struggles in the community and has real difficulty in making and maintaining a healthy social life and relationships. Despite the brokenness the defendant has experienced, I do not consider that there is any cogent material upon which I can conclude that the mental health issues which he undoubtedly has, or the antisocial conditioning from his upbringing, are capable of reducing his culpability to any material extent. I sentence him on the basis that his mental faculties were such that he bears full responsibility for his actions. The presence of the following aggravating features is agreed: the location and timing of the offence, in public in the early hours of the morning, witnessed partly by members of the public, and the attempts made to dispose of or conceal evidence, such as the blood-stained clothing and shoes. Two other factors which I consider to be important require attention. Firstly, I am sure that the taking of Miss Aleena's mobile phone was a deliberate attempt to prevent her calling for help or giving a description of what had happened to her before she died. And secondly, he had shortly before been released from the defendant's most recent sentence. The revocation of his licence on the 24th of June was placed on the police national computer on the 25th of June. In my judgment, he committed this offence in the expectation that he was likely to be returned to custody soon in any event. Apart from the guilty pleas, I find no mitigation. He has never expressed any remorse or demonstrated empathy for the outcome of his behaviour in evidence. He cried at the police station, but this was after his arrest for murder and rape, and it was not accompanied by any expression of sorrow for the impact on anyone else. His licence has been revoked and he has been serving the remainder of his previous sentence while on remand, so there are no days to be counted against the sentence I pass today. I have taken care to avoid double counting. The sexual assault is a Category 1A offence because the defendant used violence and threats and abducted the victim from the street. There was a significant degree of premeditation because he wandered around the area until he found the ideal circumstances in which to commit the offence. This was a particularly violent sexual assault committed at night in a public place on a woman out alone. The defendant removed Miss Aleena's knickers and caused injuries to her genitalia, as well as the injuries that led to her death. The sentence for that offence of sexual assault, had I been dealing with it alone, would have been 6 years imprisonment. Taking into account his history of offending, had there not been a guilty plea, I would allow 1/3 discount for the plea. I take the view that this offence is already incorporated into the minimum term for murder because I have taken the higher starting point of 30 years and I reflect the aggravating features of it in the minimum term for the murder. Having been arrested on the 27th of June, the defendant was charged with murder and rape on the 29th of June. On reception in prison, he indicated that he could not comprehend that he had done what he had done. He appeared for a preliminary hearing on the 1st of July 2022 and his PTPH was set for the 30th of September 2022. Prior to the listing, the solicitors acting for the defendant wrote to the court to inform them that they had not received an expert report commissioned from a psychiatrist because the defendant had not seen him. Furthermore, owing to the industrial action being taken by the defence bar, his instructed advocate would not be present. Accordingly, I adjourned the hearing to the 19th of October and an extension was given for service of the defence statement. The defendant failed, without a reasonable excuse, to attend 2 appointments with the psychologist on the 21st of September and the 3rd of October. His solicitors wrote to the court again to request a further adjournment. When the case came before the court for PTPH on the 19th of October, the defendant refused to attend, and it became apparent that he had not attended a conference that had been arranged with his solicitors. The defence were directed to secure the services of a psychologist who could provide a report as soon as possible, and the PTPH was adjourned to the 24th of October. On that date, the solicitors still did not have a report, and the PTPH was adjourned once again to the 11th of November. In the report of Dr. Black, which is dated the 26th of October, and which was, I'm sure, in the hands of the defence soon after that date, the defendant suggests that he did not remember what had happened, and he could not believe what he was seeing when shown the CCTV in interview. In fact, at the police interviews after arrest, the defendant affected a bored and disinterested facade. The defendant was not produced at the next hearing because he tested positive for COVID. The PTPH was put back to the 16th of November. Despite a direction that he attend in person, the defendant refused to come to court on the 16th of November and a video link had to be arranged. The defence took instructions from the defendant and approached the prosecution about potential pleas, and this was indicated to the court. The PTPH was adjourned to the 19th of November, and on that occasion, the defendant pleaded guilty to the preferred 2-count indictment, murder and sexual assault. I accept that the defence solicitors commissioned expert reports to ensure there was no psychiatric defence to the charge of murder, and to ensure fitness to plead and to be tried. These were responsible steps in a case of such gravity. I also accept that because of the action taken by criminal barristers, the defendant was not able to receive advice from junior barristers or King's Counsel until October this year. I reject the suggestion from the defence that because he was heard on a prison phone telling his mother that he was banged to rights, he should be taken to have indicated at a very, very early stage that he would accept responsibility for the killing. He never indicated this to the court until the 16th of November, and at stages his non-engagement frustrated the work being done on his behalf. In addition, as Mr. Carter Stevenson accepted in his written submission on sentence, he caused some additional delay through taking a belligerent attitude when required to come to court, including telling the jailers on one occasion that there was no point in attending a hearing at which he was required. Overall, my conclusion is that the defendant is entitled to less than the maximum discount on the murder count, and I would allow 1/8, although given the length of the term I will impose, the maximum discount allowed can be 5 years. Considering all these features, after a trial, the minimum term would have been 43 years. I allow 5 years, as I have said, for the plea of guilty indicated via counsel on the 16th of November, a few weeks before trial. A sentence of 4 years concurrent is imposed for sexual assault. The sentence for the brutal, sexually motivated murder of Zara Aleena is imprisonment for life. The defendant will serve 38 years as the minimum term. The court would like to thank counsel and also to commend Mr. and Mrs. Condor, Georgina Woolard and Maria Bergen.